I could absolutely see people starting a petition to try and get AI voting rights if they become sufficiently
And then they can just program them to
you
vote
can
the way
just
they
program
want.
them to vote how you want, because they're not going to vote for Trump. Charlie Perez, thanks for coming on to the Cultural Catholic
Hello,
YouTube
Hayden.
channel. How have you been doing?
Been doing good. Can't complain.
Okay, very good. So let's go ahead and start off by talking about your side hustle as a custom toy maker. How did you get into that, and what motivated you to pursue that as a side hustle?
So in 2011, my dad and I started hunting for toys at like Target, Walmart, specialty stores, comic book stores, Comic Cons, and trade shows, and we found that there was a lot of value in that market, and we started reselling action figures, collectibles, statues, all that kind of stuff on eBay through our eBay store. And from that, I decided, as a collector, there are not a lot of action figures out there of characters that I want. The characters that I want to have like on display with all my other like Marvel action figures, DC action figures. And so I decided to take it upon myself to reuse action figures and customize them into new characters, into new designs that have never been done before. Let's say there's like an action figure of like Spider-Man that looks terrible. I want my own version of it. I'll find the materials I need and make my own ideal Spider-Man figure. And this is not just something that I do. It's as long as action figures have been around, I'm pretty sure people have wanted to make them look the way they want and have been like painting them. I know of some people who started off like using G.I. Joe figurines and painting them with nail polish to like add different colors and stuff. But it gets more complicated than that. There's putties that you can use to sculpt on new features. You can sculpt heads, any kind of attachment you want on the figure, paint them up, and voila, you have something new.
Have you thought about dipping your toes into 3D printing?
I don't have a 3D printer. I have never really dabbled with one before, but I do buy 3D printed casts online, specifically of like head casts for characters. I know some people can digitally sculpt parts, heads, faces. I haven't experimented with that, but it's something I'd like to do one day.
So I know a lot of what you do also involves comic book characters.
Yes.
With the rise and subsequent fall of Marvel as a movie franchise and the proliferation of comic book media throughout pop culture, why do you think that the superhero has now become more popular than ever? What is it about the current cultural climate, do you think, that catalyzed that? Or do you think it was just a good investment by Disney at the right time?
I think the latter. It was a good investment at the time. I think Disney has the viewership and like the notoriety that people are going to watch whatever they put out. And so prior to Disney acquiring Marvel Entertainment, there were many superhero movies that had come out, and they'd come out, but like people didn't know who these characters were on a grand scale.
Well, yeah, there was a Spawn movie, a Daredevil movie. The Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, I think, was probably the most successful. Mm-hmm. That and the Superman series that came out. Those two were probably the most mainstream comic book properties that were in media outside of comic book format.
Yeah, I think at the time, Marvel was really pushing Spider-Man to be like their biggest hit. You'd see him in all the stores on like pajamas and stuff, but they wouldn't put out like Captain America as much or the Fantastic Four. And the Fantastic Four had a movie back then, and people today, I've talked to people my age and younger, and they don't know who the Fantastic Four are.
Yeah.
But I feel like because the new movie's coming out next year from Marvel Studios and Disney, it's going to be like a household name, just like the Avengers.
I have to say, when I saw, have you seen Deadpool Wolverine yet?
Yes.
Okay. When I saw it, I think I was watching it with my mom, and they had Chris Evans, and she recognized him as Captain America. But when it was a plot twist, and this is minor spoilers if you haven't seen the movies, so you can, it's not that big of a, spoiler, but it's a fake out where everyone in the audience is, of course, set up to believe that this is going to be Captain America, but it's the Human Torch. And that's a reference to back when Chris Evans played the Human Torch as in the Fantastic Four movies before Marvel was acquired by Disney. And I think that those kinds of meta humor references that aren't about the actual canonical Marvel Cinematic Universe, they're more about the wider pop culture knowledge of superhero movies. Those kinds of very meta jokes in Deadpool are only really possible because of how prevalent these superhero properties now are and the discussion online about them. Because another part of the movie where all those other heroes came in to go fight the big bad, and you had just one after another, all these people who online had been rumored as being cast for these beloved characters, but no movie was ever announced, now being kind of cameoed into the Wolverine Deadpool movie. That is a very, very, I think, a deep reference that a lot of people who aren't very invested in the superhero space, it just went right over their head. Not only who these characters are, but why this is a funny joke, that it's these actors playing these characters. Do you think that maybe those characters are, well, I guess, do you think Marvel is just trying to show off how popular it's become, or do you think that these kinds of jokes are not going to land with most people?
I think they knew these characters were popular with a certain generation, and I think they were really aiming for those people, because after all, this movie is a rated R movie. Well, I guess
No, it's rated R.
People are taking their kids.
I was shocked. I saw a little kid there, and
Yeah.
I was, no.
People are taking their kids to rated R
I can't
movies all the
believe-
time.
Well, I think it's, what was the last rated R movie you saw a little kid at?
I went to see the new Alien movie.
The new Alien movie?
There were some kids at that.
That's scary.
Yeah.
I would be scarred. I would be scarred for life if I was a little kid and I got to go see the new
Also,
Alien movie.
I feel like what's his name? Kevin Feige, the guy who's in charge of Marvel Studios. You know, he before Marvel Studios, he worked on all those movies, like Spider-Man, Daredevil, Fantastic Four. He's been working with them since like the turn of the century, 2000. And I feel like he just wanted to like extend an arm to these actors and be like, hey, you want to come back? But also it's also for the commercial reasons. They want to like, I don't think they really care about introducing these new characters to younger generations. They just want to bring back the nostalgia for people.
I suppose. I do think, though, that in maybe 50 years' time, when we're all in old folks' homes, they're going to have a lot of superhero movies, just like how in a lot of old folks' homes today, they have a lot of cowboy movies. I think that the superhero movie has become the new Western for this generation.
You think it'll fade out eventually?
I think it already is starting to fade out.
Not to diehard fans, I feel. They still gotta go see whatever comes out.
I don't know. And the reason I say that is because of the wokeness that Disney is pushing, and because Disney is the large entity that's providing
That is true,
these
yeah.
superhero movies. I think a lot of diehard fans I mean, statistically, I would think that it's about 50-50 split, Democrat and Republican. But even once you get into Democrat, it's not all Democrats are necessarily woke. So I think it's a too niche of a market to support the size and scale of the movie industry to just cater to that fragment of the woke population. And especially, the first time it hit me that wokeness can kill a movie was when I saw Captain Marvel. Because when I saw Captain Marvel, her character arc is that she's impulsive, rash, and emotional. And I thought, oh wow, that's kind of sexist to make that the character flaw of a woman. But the reason why it wasn't sexist is because that wasn't portrayed as a character flaw. It was portrayed as her strength as a woman, that she was very irrational and emotional and over-aggressive. Because her mentor, who we later find out is a villain, is trying to teach her to be disciplined with her emotions. And turns out he's the bad guy. So really, she never changes, and she never learns to control her emotions.
Yeah.
And so she just ends up being a whiny, angry, emotional woman with powers.
I liked the plot of the movie. I just didn't like her, personality.
I didn't like the plot of the movie. What about the plot of the movie did you like?
No, I guess I like the introduction of the Skrulls. That's pretty much it.
Okay, well, I agree. But when they eventually did the TV series on Disney Plus with the Skrulls, what was that? Secret War, Secret Invasion? I didn't see it because I don't have Disney Plus, but what I saw, it was not very well received by audiences. And you see this again also a lot with the Star Wars franchise, especially with the Acolyte.
Yeah, I think I saw the first 3 episodes, and I didn't finish it.
Do you think that there will ever be any toys made or any custom toys that are made for those more woke
Like the Acolyte?
characters? Yeah, like the Acolyte or
Well, I don't think they'll
Agatha
need to.
Harkness.
I don't think they'll need to because they can just go down to Ollie's or Ross and find them for like $7
I guess that's
in
true.
abundance.
in surplus, not
And
being sold.
yeah, for me as a fan, like if the Fantastic Four movie's coming out, and there are I'm gonna go see it no matter what. But then for like lesser known characters like Agatha Harkness, who in the comics is not young, she's an old woman. They're trying to appeal to a newer generation. I didn't even bother watching it.
Why do you say that you'll go see the Fantastic Four movie regardless?
Because those are popular characters that I do have enjoyed in the past, and I want to see what's.
What if it's a bad movie though?
Well, I'll only find out one way, right?
No, you could always just wait a week after the movie comes out and see what people say about it.
I don't know. There's like a curiosity, like you're a kid who wants to go to this amusement park, and sure they have like a lot of flaws, like they didn't screw in the roller coaster, like the tracks enough,
Right.
I could die, I could get hurt,
Get kidnapped.
but I want to see what's in there.
Get food poisoning.
Right,
You just want to see it. I don't know. I'm not like that.
No.
The only movie I saw, the last movie I saw was Am I Racist? The Matt Walsh movie in theaters.
I saw that too, yeah.
And I saw before that Deadpool, Wolverine, and then I think before that it was the Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Ooh,
It was not good.
Mission Impossible, you didn't like it?
Okay, maybe saying it's not good was a bit too harsh. It's fine. I liked past Mission Impossible movies more, but okay, I'm a little weird. I think a lot of people don't like is it the third one? Where the central plot device is about the rabbit's foot and there's a lot of doves and motorcycles.
I can't remember.
It's that one. A lot of people apparently don't like that one, but I really like that one. But I didn't like this new one, Dead Reckoning, because the positive parts of it were that the action scenes were, as usual, very good, very creative, very fun to watch. But the plot didn't matter at all. the plot was basically some guy from the first Mission Impossible movie that came out however many years ago that you don't remember is back, and he's got a personal grudge now, and they're going to try and destroy the
That's
world
the new
as
one?
usual.
The new
Yeah.
one? Yeah, it's that Hispanic guy. He's like, I think he came out in like one scene in the first movie or something.
Something like that. And he's working with a super intelligent AI.
Yeah.
And I just think, okay, well, first of all, I'm pretty sure that's not how AI actually works. As someone who's moved more into information technology professionally and has done more research into artificial intelligence and creating artificial intelligence, I'm pretty confident that there's no way artificial intelligence will ever become self-aware. And the only people who think that are the people who don't know very much about artificial intelligence. It's kind of like people who trying to think of an analog to this. What's some sort of like, it's like multiverse theory people. I think multiverse theory people are the kind of people who see something in popular media and then think, oh, this is definitely real. This is definitely scientific. And yes, there are some like scientists who are looking into multiverse, but it's not a very, from my understanding, it's not a very seriously entertained model of the cosmos because it's unverifiable, though I don't know. There might be something about string theory related to it, but I think most people just don't really know enough about these specialties in the scientific and computer science fields. And so when we get these ideas presented in popular media, like multiverse theory or AI becoming self-aware, and there's not a corresponding education about the reality of the topic at hand, it just kind of becomes accepted as scientifically accurate. Another good example of this actually is abortion, right? So you get this popular depiction of it in media and through the news, and people don't really get more scientifically educated on it when it comes to the actual facts. They just accept the narrative as it's presented through popular sources. And then you have basically a whole country and whole world with inaccurate understandings of important topics.
Same thing with like how masks worked during COVID-19.
Yes, the COVID-19 masks. Yeah, I don't know. I think that it's hard though to say, okay, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to research and look into everything that comes out because I don't want to be bamboozled, because no one has that kind of time. And it's just, we're built to rely on what other people tell us as being true. That's just how we operate. Well, this was also a big deal when it came to, I think, maybe the early 2000s, early 2010s, when there was that big anti-Christian sentiment about Christianity just kind of being for dumb people. And you get this in stuff like The Big Bang Theory and young Sheldon, of course, where Sheldon is the stereotypical, very smart scientist, and he's not very religious, but his hokey country mom is very religious because religion is just for silly people who don't know any better. And that kind of mentality was also very popular in a lot of media and culture. And even now in things like, I think, Rick and Morty, you still have strains of that kind of presentation of religion. So what would be a way, do you think, that maybe people could fight against those false cultural representations of these important ideas? Or do you think you just have to try and do your best and we'll never really get out of it?
That I don't know. Yeah.
I used to have a conspiracy theory that the reason why there were all these popular media depictions of AI being self-aware is so that at some point in the future, when AI is sufficiently advanced, people in power will try to give them voting rights.
Oh, yeah.
Give AI bots voting rights. That's my conspiracy theory. I don't know if it's true. It's probably not.
Well,
but I could absolutely see people starting a petition to try and get AI voting rights if they become sufficiently
And then they can just program them to
yeah, you
vote
can
the way
just
they
program
want.
them to vote how you want because they're not going to vote for Trump.
It's the same way that they so many people who have passed away that are registered
Yeah.
as voters.
Well, that's a tricky thing because, of course, if you die, you can't say that you've died and have that scrubbed off. So the county or the election office has to try and implement systems to purge those accounts, and some are stricter than others. I mean, there's no perfect way to do it, but I don't know. I think Texas is probably okay about it. I guess we should probably get back on track to like toys and comic books. Who is your favorite superhero, and why are they your favorite?
So when I was very little, I would say like Spider-Man. That was the one I was most attached to. But I would say today, my favorite superhero would be Daredevil.
Is it because he's Catholic, or is it?
No, that's part of it, I guess. But and if you've read like the comic books of Daredevil, it was very lighthearted, especially like around the Silver Age in the 60s.
Interesting, because now it's very dark.
But when you get to like the 1970s, they started introducing characters like Bullseye, which are much more fierce adversaries. And then there was the run by Frank Miller, I believe, it was getting more dark, and they introduced characters like Elektra, and all those arcs are much more darker. And it's interesting to see someone who has, like morals, who has a sense of like, I can't kill people, I have to keep myself like more pure, going up against darker things. Like there's a group called the Hand, which is like an ancient clandestine organization of ninjas.
So is that just like a play on the Foot Clan?
Yes.
They call them the Hand?
No.
Is that intentional?
No, it's the reverse. The TMNT was based off of Daredevil.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
they ripped off the Hand by calling them the
Yeah,
Foot Clan.
that's why you got like Splinter, and Daredevil's mentor his name was Stick.
Oh, I never put that together.
And I even, at the time, like there were a lot of characters that were like parodies of like characters from Daredevil. I think there was a female superhero in The Tick. You ever heard of The Tick?
I have heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Who looked kind of like Elektra. And so Daredevil was really the inspiration for a lot of different things, specifically TMNT. And I think there was like somewhere someone said like, what if there's one incarnation of TMNT where the turtles that get irradiated with the ooze fall down the sewer because a truck is coming down the street and it almost hits a little boy who's carrying a bowl of turtles, right? Or maybe it was like a man carrying a bowl of turtles, and they say it was Matt Murdock who pushed him out of the way.
Oh.
And so that ooze got in his eyes, and then the ooze also fell down the sewer and created the turtles, the Ninja Turtles. I think Daredevil has like the coolest like abilities, like almost like Spider-Man, how Spider-Man web swings. Daredevil has like his billy clubs that also have like a cord in them that he can like grapple to like different things and swing from that. Something about Daredevil attracts me the most.
I used to not understand the appeal of Superman. And did you like Man of Steel when it came out?
Yes.
Okay. I know that from the discussions I've seen online, it was apparently a little divisive, but I enjoyed Man of Steel because I could really feel the power behind Superman. Mm-hmm. And that was something that, to me, didn't come through as clearly in other movie incarnations of Superman.
Mm-hmm. There's that scene where, remember when he was holding onto the fence and he like the metal gate on the fence, and he like crushes it. when that bully is like about to hit him.
Yeah.
And I think people don't understand is that Superman has all this power, and very well could like obliterate mankind, right? If he wanted to, with the aid of like other metahumans and all that. But the fact that he doesn't, and the fact that he resists, I think is a big part of his character.
I think that that point actually plays into a lot of issues with feminism and victim hierarchies overall. Because the only way to actually create the kind of harmonious society that a lot of leftists want is to appeal to the moral sensibility and the duty of the strong to protect the weak. And so the very fact that feminism exists and that equity initiatives exist is itself proof that racism and sexism are not powerful forces in the United States. Because if they were powerful forces in the United States, those in power, according to those dominance hierarchies, would not use that power to help the weak. They would dominate the weak. But the mere fact that feminism and other equity initiatives have gotten so popular is itself evidence that those kinds of systemic oppressions just aren't powerful, or at least aren't very prevalent. And that also goes to a lot of, I don't know where you stand on this, but I am of the stance that hierarchies are natural, and those with power, those with resources, have a duty and a responsibility to serve those who are weaker. And I think you see this clearly with the example of Jesus when he washes the disciples' feet. Those who wish to be the greatest among you must become as the least, right? Mm-hmm. You must do unto others as I have done unto you. Jesus asks us to become the slaves of others. But specifically, it's those with power, right? It's the apostles. It's God himself who becomes the slave of the weakers. Mm-hmm. And because of this, I worry a lot about the narrative that feminism pushes, because I think it's very easily co-opted by more toxic streams of masculinity, like what's seen in the Red Pill community, because they both accept that men are powerful and that men will use that power to abuse others. They both accept that premise. And I think both of those are very unchristian positions. Now, obviously, people can and do and historically will use their power to abuse others. But the solution is to then breed men, specifically, as the dominant party, to cultivate their power, firstly, and then to exercise that power in service of the weak. Because if men don't cultivate their power, then the hierarchy becomes impotent, right? Men cannot do what they do not. Men cannot help people if they don't have the power to, right? If Superman was a weak, flimsy guy, just an ordinary boy who didn't exercise or do anything, he wouldn't be able to help anyone. So in order for hierarchies to work, the powerful party actually needs to have their power. So men need to cultivate not only physical strength, but also economic and social status. And then use that in order to provide for and take care of others. And I think that that is naturally what I think men are inclined to do and what women are inclined to seek after. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of psychological and sociological data to back up those conclusions. And I think Superman is, in a sense, a really good role model for that because, like you said, he has all of this power, but he doesn't use it to dominate others, right? That's what Zod does. Zod uses his power to try and dominate the world. He uses his power to serve the weak and to protect the vulnerable. Another interesting thing about the Man of Steel movie is that it's kind of pro childbirth and pro
Yeah, I noticed
family,
that too.
because the whole crux of the movie and why Zod is even after Superman is because he's a natural born son of Krypton with the kind of Kryptonian gene pool seed embedded in him.
Hmm.
Whereas the rest of Kryptonian society basically does a bunch of IVF.
Yeah,
And genetically, it's kind of like Brave New World, where they specifically make people genetically fit for whatever role they have in
Yeah.
society. So that you will make people kind of like in Brave New World, less smart or less strong, depending on what role you're assigning to them in society. So how do you think then is that kind of theme present in other Superman stories? Because I haven't seen that in other ones, to my knowledge.
the part with like the natural born births.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with anything else like that.
Do you think that that's a good addition to the mythos?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think Zack Snyder gets the credit he deserves for that movie, and
I think it was probably
the best of the
the
trilogy.
best DC superhero movie that they've done.
Well,
Wonder Woman is pretty good too, though.
my favorite is the director's cut of Batman v Superman.
I haven't seen the director's cut.
So if you watch the theatrical release of that movie and Justice League, they don't really make sense. Specifically, Batman vs Superman, the director's cut of that one really explains how evil Lex Luthor is in that movie. That movie got a lot of criticism for making Lex Luthor kind of like
Kind of eccentric and weird.
an eccentric like millennial.
Yeah.
But I think they make up for that with his plot to discredit Superman in front of the entire world, and it really explains like his plan in more detail.
That's good.
And all this like all the different like secretive like ways that he goes about doing it. Yeah, he straight up murders like tons of people multiple times in that movie.
What do you think about the Wonder Woman movie?
I really liked the first one.
Well, yeah, the second
yeah.
one is pretty bad. I saw the second one, and
I didn't really like it either.
it's horrible. So the first one, why does the first one work? Well, how about let's look at Wonder Woman's character arc in that first movie.
So she's kind of like naive to like the rest of the world. She doesn't really know much until she actually goes out there and sees that there's other people, men and women, who are suffering during the war. And she kind of realizes that like I have this power to like protect mankind, both men and women, you know, from Ares. I think he was the main villain of that movie, right?
Right.
And so, I don't know, it's kind of like just seeing like how big the world is and like her coming to terms with like what her responsibility is. What would you say?
One thing that I kind of liked about it is that, in a way, even though the background is Greek mythology, it plays into it's basically like a Christian worldview in a way, right? Because her original view is that man is just good and lovey-dovey and will have peace and harmony. But that dastardly Ares throws everything off and makes everyone want to go to war. And there's a sense in which that's kind of true, like pre-fall, right? But as she matures and gets to the climax of the movie, she beats Ares, but man is still willing to go to war. And I think that is very much kind of close to the situation post-fall, where yes, the devil is real and he does influence the world and influence people to do evil, but there's also something broken and twisted in the heart of man, such that even if the devil didn't influence us, there would still be brokenness and sin and violence. And both of those corrupting factors of original sin and concupiscence and the temptations of the devil work together to create terrible atrocities in the world like those seen in World War I. And so when she conquers Ares, there's still the fighting. And the fighting is kind of like solved, right? The big climax of the movie isn't her defeating Ares, but it's her pilot boyfriend sacrificing himself, right? The thing that defeats the evil is an act of sacrificial love, which I think is why the movie works. And notably, her naivety, I think, the point at which she's no longer naive is when he dies at the end to sacrifice himself. Because it's when she experiences a deep personal loss like that, that she's no longer naive. Now, I mean, like, there's part of it where she sees everyone still trying to fight, and it's not just Ares. But I think that the second part, or maybe the larger reason why she's no longer naive at the end, is because she has to deal with a real personal loss. And I think that there's something about suffering and loss that is really a remedy for being naive.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. And so that's why I think the first movie works so well. And also she's very feminine in the first movie. Because there's, I mean, it's one scene, but it's very important scene. That you would never see that in Captain Marvel, where she's out in the streets of London and she sees a baby and just goes, "Oh, cute baby," and then wants to hold the baby and see the baby and everything. It's all very motherly and affectionate. And so having that feminine part of her personality be there and be on display, while also letting her be very confident and capable, is important. And notably, the other men that she's with, while all have their own flaws, they're all still confident and capable men too. And so there aren't any characters that have to kind of be sacrificed or belittled to show how strong she is, because they can all be shown to be strong in different ways. So that's why I really like the first Wonder Woman movie. So I know you brought up that Spider-Man was popular. Why is Spider-Man so popular? I think if you were to talk to people, who is your favorite superhero? Spider-Man is what most people would say next to Batman. And those two characters are very different from each other in terms of tone. So why do you think, I could be wrong, maybe they're not the most popular?
Depends on like what era you mean, like of the
Well, let's say modern era.
modern era.
Because I think, would you disagree that those are the two most popular? Why?
Yeah.
Is it just that they've had good movies? Or is there something about the characters themselves that makes them relevant to this history, time in history?
Well, I don't know how certain people relate to him in certain ways, but I don't like relate to those people relating to Spider-Man.
You don't, do you
Like,
not relate to me?
No, for example, like people say, I relate to Spider-Man because he's a teenager like me.
Okay.
Right? Like that's not really important to me. Him being young or, like inexperienced or anything like that. I think at a very base level, it's mainly because he's cool. He has a cool suit. He can do cool things, right? But when you actually think about it, like his origin, and failing to do what he needed to do to save his uncle, right? Well, he didn't know that the guy was going to kill his uncle, right?
Well, but the point is that he should have known that he had an obligation to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
Right.
And so it just so happened that the consequence of his failure is worse than he thought it would be.
Right.
But the important thing is that if it wasn't going to be his Uncle Ben, it would have been someone else, right? And this kind of makes it more poignant, I think, to him as a character, which is important. But
it kind of shows you like what you need to do, like in terms of your responsibilities. Like I have responsibility to, like, I don't know, pay the bills, for my family because they're sick or something like that, right? And if I don't, it could be anything, right? Let's say I have a responsibility to go to school, but get the best grades I can to, because eventually I'll have a family and I need a good job, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like you should worry about like your responsibilities now because you don't know what will happen if you fail to.
Yeah, but it's also not just family, right? It's like what Cain asks, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And Jesus's declaration that we should love our neighbors, and who is our neighbor, right? Everyone, right? All of humanity are individuals that, in a sense, we're collectively responsible for each other. And with Spider-Man, the death of his uncle, he would, and this is a point that's made very clear in the Spider-Verse animated series that's going on currently, that Spider-Man is who he is because of the death of his uncle. That if it's not for that, he does not become Spider-Man. And
what did they call that in the movie? Like the anchor point or something?
Yeah, anchor point. Well, that's
something like that.
Wolverine, like anchor being. It's
The-
something,
the-
continuity,
the,
whatever.
the nexus point or something like that?
I don't know, some made-up word. But yeah, and that kind of can be related a lot to the fall of Adam and Eve in a way, because without that fall, right, without that tragedy, we don't get to become adopted sons of the Father in the way we do now, right? We don't get to become Spider-Man ourselves. But, so that's maybe why Spider-Man is so popular, because he shows us the importance of responsibility and duty to others. And it's brought about through this very deep personal suffering. And something similar to that is part of Batman's story. He loses his parents to a senseless act of violence, kind of like Spider-Man. The difference, though, is that Batman, when his parents die, he is not culpable for that in the way that Spider-Man is. But nevertheless, and that's maybe why Batman becomes darker. Maybe Batman becomes darker because he's not responsible for the tragedy in a kind of weird way. That because Spider-Man is morally blameworthy for not saving his uncle, he turns out better than Batman. Because when Spider-Man fails to protect his uncle, he uses that as a motivator to do better within himself, because he sees that, oh, I'm the reason this happened. I should do better. But when Batman loses his parents, it's not his fault.
It's more like
It's not that he needs to do something better.
Blaming the evils of the world.
It's the world that needs to be punished.
Yeah.
And so he usually has a kind of like vengeance attitude more than I need to do better and help others too. I need to hurt the people who hurt me. Because it's not a personal flaw that led to the suffering. It's kind of just senseless, and so he gets angry and hurts people. And the more, I guess, like darker iterations of his character.
I guess people also like Batman because maybe they have a part inside them that like wants to like do vengeance against those who have wronged them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like an escape.
Well, but I think that to call Batman's character just some guy after revenge isn't totally accurate, because a lot of depictions of Batman, he is the man who will make the hard decisions, but not a vengeful, angry man. He's cool and calculated. And I think of the Justice League animated Batman.
He has self-control, right?
Self-control. I have contingency plans to take all of you out, and it's not because I hate you, but it's because that's something that I need to have to keep people safe. And you aren't willing to do it. You aren't willing to make that hard call, but I am, because I'm like dispassionate and rational. I think that the vengeance, I don't know, what's a good depiction of the vengeance Batman?
Maybe the new the Batman movie.
With Edward from Twilight, what's his name?
Robert Pattinson.
He did a great job with that movie. I really liked how it almost had like kind of a Western sub-theme when it has him work. I mean, it spurs on his Batman boots, the sound that he makes when he walks. And that reminds me a lot of Western movies because the whole point of the Western movie is it's the tough man bringing law and order and justice to a lawless land. And the lawless land is Gotham City. And so the tough man, Batman, acts as like
The sheriff.
The sheriff, and he goes in and cleans up the streets. And so that Western theme was actually something I wasn't expecting, but I rather enjoyed. And so he's the more revenge-focused Batman.
Yeah, in that movie, they depict him as like having no time for eating, going to like his business meetings for his daytime job. He's solely focused on how can I do better than the next night. You know, he's focused on that. It takes up all of his time, right?
Yeah. So what about that Batman do you think appeals to people? Why is he so popular?
Maybe when you see like lawlessness in our own society, you get where I'm going. Like, do
you think it's then part of it because he is just a guy who doesn't have powers?
Yeah, it could be any of us.
Yeah, he could be any of us. Whereas Spider-Man, you can't. I don't have web shooters. I can't crawl up walls. I don't have a spidey sense or anything. Mama, I know you're in the kitchen. It's sensitive microphone, so just to be sure we don't pick you up, how long are you going to be in the kitchen for? Okay, I love you. Thank you. Okay.
You live with your mother?
I do live with my mother. Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
You know, maybe part of, do you think a lot of the comic book stuff being so popular has to deal with delayed maturity or delayed or prolonged adolescence?
Like we're still like the reason that we're still into it as adults?
Yeah.
Maybe I think back then, like in the 40s, 50s, even 60s, like little kids have their comic books or their horror magazines, and then their dad comes home and he'll be like, "What is this? Like, you still into this?" And then they tear it up and they throw it in the trash, right?
Sure.
Back then, I guess maybe
I
like
guess.
back then people were kind of like expected, maybe from society, to like mature out of that kind of stuff at a later age. But today it's like it's almost cool, right? Wouldn't you say?
I don't know if I would say it's cool. I think it's more socially acceptable.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say it's cool because I think if you were, I mean, of course, the only individuals whose opinions matter in these things is women from the ages of 18 to 30. And I think if you were to ask them, is it cool? Some of them would probably say yes, but I think most of them would say no. There's actually a really fun survey.
It reflects on like your priorities.
Yeah.
Someone who is into toys, action figures, and comic books, they're gonna expect, oh, this guy like isn't, a guy who has like a 401k or a nice fancy car. He's not a football player or something, right?
Yeah, you've got a very nice car, by the way. It's very nice. I've got my very boring Honda. No, it's not a Honda. My very boring Toyota Prius.
But shouldn't things that you were interested in as a child inspire you when you're older?
They should inspire you. Well, let me give you an example. So there was a survey that was done, and I don't know who did it or how valid it was, but it sounded pretty good in terms of what the results were. It very much lined up with what I was expecting. And it was basically a survey of women asking what hobbies they found the least attractive in men. Video games was number one. And I think that makes a lot of sense because one of the things that I think women look for in a partner is work ethic. And I think that there is a correlation or even maybe just something less than that, like a stigma, that individuals who play video games into their adulthood are less productive and have less work ethic. And I think that that can certainly be true for some individuals. And I think maybe these artifacts that are commonly associated with adolescence, like comic books and video games, they carry a kind of lingering sense of adolescence if you have them in adulthood. So people will see them and think, oh, that's something that's done as a teenager or something. And then when they see it, they think, oh, this is a sign of maybe a lack of maturity. And I think because of how popular superheroes are becoming and how mainstream they are, that is probably not as strong of a social stigma as it used to be when it comes to superheroes. But I think it's maybe getting stronger with video games. Why? Well, first, what's your relationship with video games like? Because I've had a very close relationship with all my video games.
Do you still play video games?
So I haven't played them as frequently as I used to, but I still have my Xbox One. So I haven't gotten the new one yet, mostly because I don't see any new Xbox games that are particularly attractive to me. And I did get a Switch a few years back, and I'm trying to sell the Switch. So if you want the Switch, just let me know. But I've noticed with my video game habits that I don't play as often as I used to, just because my time is taken up with more adult stuff, right? And I think that I would like to get to the... This is really for vanity reasons, but I think that that's a good enough reason. Is I think I would like to get to the point where I don't play video games and I just read. Because I think that reading is a better hobby in terms of it helps you become more cultured and intelligent and knowledgeable. Whereas video games can help you become cultured and knowledgeable, but not to the extent that reading can. I think reading is still where most of the real treasures of humanity are kept. And I used to describe myself as a functional illiterate. So an illiterate is someone who can't read. A functional illiterate is someone who just won't read. So they're functionally as good as someone who can't read because they just won't read. And I used to self-describe as a functional illiterate. I could read, but I just won't because I didn't like reading. And it was only really, I think, this year that I started reading more. I had done the Bible in a Year challenge, but that wasn't really, that felt like work. That felt like a daily task to do. But I recently started reading Brandon Sanderson, who's a popular American fantasy writer. And his work has been entertaining enough to me to where I can do it and it doesn't feel like work to do.
So, to answer your first question, when I was little, like this was like maybe 2001, maybe 1999, I can't remember, but it was when PlayStation came out, the first one. My parents had bought that. They also got a PlayStation 2, and so I played a lot of games on those systems. I enjoyed PlayStation 2, but I feel like today I can say that the better games were for PlayStation 1.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Like the games that I played on PlayStation 1 I enjoyed much more than the ones for PS2. Because PS1 had... Well, first off, my parents, I think maybe when they bought it, it came with Tomb Raider, but they never let me play it because the way that Lara Croft looks.
Right. She has the traffic cones
Yeah.
strapped to her.
So they had it, and I saw it in like the cabinet, but I was never allowed to play that. But my favorite was Crash Bandicoot, the original.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that character? Or?
I am familiar with the franchise. I've played a little bit of Crash Bandicoot, and I just couldn't get into it.
Which one?
It was... Do all of them have the tiki mask guy? Yeah. Oh, well then I don't know.
But like, when Crash made a comeback, like years ago, it was post 2010.
Okay.
That's the best I can say. They redesigned him. They made him look so like
weird,
like a rat. They added like the fur texture to him. In the original games, the graphics were very like
Yeah, you don't have fur.
cube-like almost.
Yeah.
And so and also they portray him as like insane, like in the new ones. But like back then, he had like humor, rationality, and stuff like that.
He was a real boy. He wasn't a rabid animal.
And I just enjoyed the very first game. The second one, which was Crash Bandicoot 2.
That is generally how the numbers go, yeah.
And then there was Crash Bandicoot Warped. I just couldn't get confused on like the names of them.
Okay.
My other favorite game for PS1 was Spider-Man.
Okay. I played the Spider-Man 1 game, and
Are you talking about the movie one?
yeah, the movie tie-in.
This is not the movie one. This is from
different
this is
one.
based off like the comics.
Okay.
So this game at the time was like the ideal Spider-Man. Like when you read the comic books, this is like comic books
Okay.
to screen,
Was it 3D or side scroller?
3D animation.
Okay.
And I remember it has a lot of memes come out of that game. Like whenever you hit like the health thing that's floating, and you have a full bar, he'll say, "I'm already at full health."
I'm not familiar with that meme,
And
but I'll take your word
no matter
for
time,
it.
every time you hit it, he'll just keep saying it.
Okay.
It
A
was-
lot of video games. Well, a lot of older video games had that a lot.
A lot of memes came out of that game, but that was like a big part of my childhood.
Did
playing
you ever get
games.
into the Lego games?
Yes.
Which-
So that's when I got PS2. The first Lego Star Wars ones.
Yeah, I think that was the first game I got for my PlayStation 2. Was
Yeah.
the original trilogy Star Wars Lego games, and I eventually got when we got the Wii, I got the one that was for the prequels and the original, and now I am shocked. It's just outrageous to me that in the new ones, like Rise of Skywalker and everything, they're actually like talking like proper words.
No, like in the original ones, they acted out
Yeah,
stuff.
they did like
Yeah.
pantomime with, gestures and weird, not word sounds like grunts and stuff, and that was great.
Another game I liked was it was called Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights.
No, not
You ever
familiar
play that
with
one?
it.
No. That was like the classic original show, but like game form.
Did you ever? So my favorite PlayStation exclusive game that I got into with the PlayStation 2 and continued playing when I got my PlayStation 3 were the Ratchet and Clank video games. Did you ever dabble in those?
Yes. So my parents got me a PSP, like around 5th grade or 6th grade. It was like the summer before 6th grade. They got me a PSP, and it came with a free Ratchet and Clank game.
Okay.
But like 5 minutes into the game, there was like a hard part, and I just quit.
I couldn't beat the first level of the first Ratchet and Clank game when I was younger. I couldn't beat the level by myself. I had to get a friend to come over and beat it for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I love Ratchet and Clank, and if I ever get another console, it'll be a PlayStation 5, so I can play the new Ratchet and Clank.
Did you ever have a PlayStation 1?
No, I got in at PlayStation 2, but I did have. I think I had almost every version of the PSP that came out.
I think I had the first version.
Yeah, I think I don't the first the 1000 and 2000 model of the PSP were so similar looking to me that I can't remember which one I had. I had one of those two, and that's when I first got into Monster Hunter. I got Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, and that was the big game I played on there. And I also got. I'm pretty sure my mom didn't know I got this, but I got a download of one of the Grand Theft Autos.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a lot of fun. But like those Grand Theft Autos on the PSP, the graphics are so poor that all the violence doesn't really, it's not that bad.
So as for the only violent game I've ever played, well, unless you count like Call of Duty Black Ops, the very first one, I've played that one. But for PS1, I had Twisted Metal 2. Are you familiar with those games?
I am familiar with those games. And for a disclaimer, I'm not saying that Grand Theft Auto is appropriate for young audiences. Okay, continue.
So Twisted Metal 2 was like we didn't have the first one, but the second one, you pick your location, you pick your character, and you're basically on the map with all these other cars, and you have to just destroy them all.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun.
What is your? Do you still play video games? Do you have any more modern
I
games?
haven't played games in years, but it's funny that you brought it up because I was thinking of restarting my PS2.
You still have a PS2?
I do. And
I gotta come over sometime. We gotta play PS2.
The only PlayStation 1 games that I still have are Spider-Man and Crash Bandicoot.
Did you ever play any Sonic games?
Yes. So for PS2, my sister is 14 years older than me. So she was born in 1982. So when Sonic came out, she was she was there for that. And I don't think she had a Genesis, but she had what was called the Sega Game Gear.
Mm-hmm.
It was this big clunky thing. And I remember she let me take it out and try Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on that. And I remember I got to a hard part and just quit.
Do you prefer the 2D or the 3D Sonic games?
2D.
I am the opposite. I prefer the 3D. I can't stand the 2D Sonic games.
So I grew up mostly playing the 3D ones, but personally I liked the 2D better. Mainly for PS2 I had Sonic Heroes.
I love Sonic Heroes.
So I completed that game multiple times. I had Shadow the Hedgehog.
I also had... Okay, I feel kind of stupid.
Also.
Maybe it's just because I was a kid, but all of the bad games that everyone loves to nag on, that everyone online says, oh, this is like one of the worst games ever made. I loved those games. I loved Shadow the Hedgehog.
Me too.
I loved... What was another game that everyone kind of thinks is...
Sonic 06, as they call it.
I love Sonic 06.
Me too. that was my first game for PS3 that I had.
Yeah. I thought I never beat it. I thought the romance was weird, but other than that, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah. It was like Sonic the Hedgehog the movie.
Yeah. The opening cutscene was the only cooler cutscenes in a Sonic game are in Sonic Unleashed. But
that one I had, and that one I wasn't that was like one of my least favorite Sonic games.
I thought the cutscenes were good.
Yeah.
The cinematics looked really fun. Surprisingly, though, apparently people are starting to warm up to Sonic Unleashed.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the one with the werehog, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's weird.
For PS2, did you ever have the Sonic Mega Collection?
No.
That was just a compilation of all the original games.
That's probably why. Because I didn't like the 2D. I played the 2D Sonic games.
Sonic 2, Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic Spinball.
Have you played...
Sonic 3D was on there.
Have you done like Sonic Mania, the new 2D remaster things? My only experience with 2D Sonic was, I think I was like playing on my aunt's computer or something, and she had one of the Sonic games on there. Mm-hmm. And I played it, and I just didn't like that I couldn't see everything. I felt like I couldn't see what was going on. It felt too constrained. But with the 3D ones, it feels better, strangely enough. Even though, of course, everyone says that the 2D Sonic games are the better games generally. Mm-hmm. But, okay. So that's your history with PlayStation. I assume you never got any of the newer ones? Newer PlayStations, like never a PlayStation 4? Or...
I have a PlayStation 4, but mainly because my brother bought it.
Okay. Have you done Bloodborne?
No.
Okay. It is. I haven't done Bloodborne, but I did do... For the record, I have played all of the Dark Souls games, and I've beaten all of them. I haven't done the DLC, but I have beaten the Dark Souls games, so I am a real gamer. But what has been your favorite modern game? Did you ever do Skyrim?
No.
Really?
Like all those medieval fantasy, like anything that looks... Also things that look like anime, like Final Fantasy. I've never played any of that.
I couldn't get into Final Fantasy. I'm sure it's fine.
The last game that I played from start to finish was the entire series of Uncharted.
Really? Okay. I played... So when I say I had every version of the PSP, I got like the PSP base. I got the PSP Go, which was the one that you didn't put a disc in. It just you had to download the games and you'd like slide it. And then I also got the PS Vita when that came out. And so the only Uncharted game I've ever played is the PS Vita Uncharted Golden Abyss game. And I think that if I don't really like the more cinematic story-based games, as weird as that is. So like God of War, well, the new God of War stuff, Last of Us, those kinds of very narratively driven story games, I don't really find myself latching onto. But things that are open-ended RPGs like Skyrim, I really like. And I don't know why. So what is it about the Uncharted games that you like?
So I'd always played like games where you like Sonic, where you go from one destination to another, or where you like follow the story and like mainly fighting people and stuff. But I kind of liked the whole like solving the clues and stuff, and it made you think, something that was kind of intellectual almost.
Did you ever figure out the plot twist before it happened?
It's been a while. What happened again?
I don't know. I've never played any of them.
Oh.
I just know Nathan Drake is a guy who goes around with his older mentor friend Sully, and they do things that are Uncharted. Did you see the movie?
I did, yeah.
What did you think?
It was okay, for what it was, but I think the games take place when he's older, right?
Well, I don't know because I don't know how old he's supposed to be in the movie.
Yeah.
But when it was Tom Holland that they cast, he's not super young. I mean, I get it. Some of you watching might think he's super young. I don't think he's super young, but he looks like a teenager. He looks like a kid.
In the games, I think Nathan Drake was like
Nathan in the games looks
mid-30s.
old. Yeah,
mid-30s.
And that could just be because I'm used to in media. If you're a high schooler, you're in your late 20s, and if you're an adult, you're in your early 40s. In media, when you're casting actors, that's just how it works. Like Tom Cruise is still, he's probably like in his 50s by now, and he's still playing people who are probably significantly younger than that. So, and like Hugh Jackman, he's older too, but he's always playing, like the Wolverine is not supposed to be probably that old canonically. Well, I guess he doesn't age.
So Wolverine's probably like
a few hundred.
Yeah, but he's probably like looks the age of like a
30?
40-year-old probably.
40-year-old. Oh, okay. Well, maybe not too bad. But yeah, it's just in movies they always have to make him a little older. So, but yeah, Tom, he looks very young. And so, yeah, I thought it looked off from the games, but I kind of trusted that he would be okay at acting like Nathan Drake, even if he didn't really look like him. But I wasn't expecting anything too great from that movie. Have you seen the Sonic movies?
I have.
I was surprised at how decent the first one was. It wasn't outstanding, but for a video game movie about a hedgehog collecting rings, being chased by a mad scientist that makes robots, it was decent. Did you see the second one?
I did.
Okay, I haven't seen the second one. How is it?
So there's one scene that's kind of for children, want me to spoil it?
Sure.
I think they're like in the adventure, they stop at like some, like almost like a tavern type place, like in like the snowy mountains.
Okay.
And they get into like a dance off with some people or something. And I was thinking like, that's aimed towards kids. But the rest of it, I thought was pretty good, like action and humor. And I didn't like that they made Knuckles like a lower, like dumb, like doesn't understand like basic, like, how like Drax the Destroyer was in Guardians of the Galaxy?
Oh no. They made him. Have you ever seen Tropic Thunder? You never go full.
Yeah.
Did they make him full? Did they go?
No, he's just like, they got the angry part.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be angry all the time, right? But he doesn't understand like phrases. Like if you were to say, hold your horses, he'd be like, I don't have no horses to hold, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sonic's actually been in a lot of media. Did you ever see Sonic X? I was watching.
I did.
Sonic X was like I was growing up, and I was the target demographic of Sonic X when it was airing,
Me too.
and so I got into Sonic X, and I don't know how I feel about
Are
it.
you gonna talk about Chris?
Chris was always annoying. The best parts of the show were when Chris was not there.
Yeah.
But
So, my favorite incarnation of Sonic are so when I first got into Sonic and started playing the games, I would go to Borders bookstore. Remember that store? Borders.
like I said, I was functionally illiterate for a long
So
time.
there was Barnes and Noble, Half Price Books, and Borders.
Okay.
And we had a Borders down in Stafford. You ever been to Stafford, right?
Okay, so I can read now, but I am dependent on my GPS to get me anywhere that I'm not usually used to going. So I don't usually go to Stafford. So
It's right
I
next.
don't know.
It's right next to Sugarland.
Oh, okay, so it's further
And
south then.
no, it's a little up further north, I think.
Oh, okay, so it's further north of Sugarland.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I used to go to Borders and buy the what were called the Sonic Archives.
Is that like part of the Archie comic series, or is that different?
Yes.
Okay.
They were compilations of all the Archie comic books from 1992 up until like the early 2000s, I'd say.
So
And,
that's your favorite depiction?
The very first Sonic the Hedgehog comics. So when the game came out, I guess there was the comic book adaptation as well, where it was Sonic and Tails. He had brown fur instead of like golden. And then they had characters like Sally, the
Squirrel.
I think she was like a
Chipmunk.
chipmunk. I guess you've seen what they look like, right?
I'm vaguely familiar with the Archie comic series.
Yeah, it was that kind of. And then and they were humorous. They were funny. But I stopped reading them after like the art changed and they started like introducing like the echidnas and all that. And
What did you ever see Sonic Underground?
I did.
That is a weird show. Imagine being the guy who pitched Sonic Underground
Mm-hmm.
into a bunch of CEOs.
Like Sonic is like a royalty or something. He has like a princess brother and they all have like their
they're
guitars.
not that progressive. It's not a princess brother. They're not that progressive.
No, I mean like there's a princess sister and
Yes,
and
there's
then
a princess
brother.
sister, and then he has a brother, and they have like a band.
Oh, that
They
was
play
weird.
music. That is really weird.
I liked the original cartoon with J. Lil White as the voice of Sonic. You know who J. Lil White is?
No.
He was Steve Urkel on Family Matters.
Okay, interesting. That might have been before my time.
That was a show from the 90s.
Yeah, that was before my time. I was born
I remember
1998, so I'm only
there
like
was
2000s.
there was a issue of the Archie comics where Sonic is battling Robotnik, and Robotnik creates all these different like robots, but he can't like legally put them out because they're like ripoffs of other like big characters from the 90s. So one of them was the Spawn mower.
Interesting.
It's Spawn with like a body of a lawnmower, and it just immediately crashes because like he can't. The more he's on screen, like the more he'll get sued, the more chance he'll get sued. And then there was one Wolverine robot, but he looks like Steve Urkel with the big nerdy glasses,
Interesting.
and he called it the Wolverkel. And he says, and Sonic's like, something about your voice seems familiar.
Okay. So, what do you think are, speaking of like cultural touchstones, what do you think are some movies or media that are so influential on pop culture that you basically need to know about them, or else you're not really, like you're socially handicapped if you don't? I think one of them is, I think, Star Wars. I think you need to, I never saw Game of Thrones. And I think that no one really cares about Game of Thrones anymore. I think that was kind of a fad. But I think Star Wars has had a lot of staying power in the culture. I think a lot of people still talk about it, and it's also still going on, which is probably why. I think The Matrix, I think at least the first one.
I've seen it, but I don't remember much of it.
I think that because there's still a lot of reference to like red pill, blue pill, The Matrix is still a good movie to be familiar with.
How about The Twilight Zone?
Twilight Zone. I love the Twilight. Have you seen the new remake of it?
Is it with Jordan Peele?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, I haven't either.
I've seen the original. I've seen the version from the 80s.
Yeah, I love the original Twilight Zone.
So like when someone says like, "Oh, we're in the Twilight Zone," people wouldn't know what that was unless
Yes.
they'd seen it, right?
I think everyone should watch, maybe not the entire Twilight Zone, but there are maybe 5 or 10 episodes of the Twilight Zone that I think everyone should watch because they're just so good. I really like the one where it's the guy and he just hates being around people and he just wants to be left alone and read his book.
Henry Bemis.
I don't remember his name, but that's probably it.
That was Henry Bemis. He was played by Burgess Meredith.
Interesting.
You know who Burgess Meredith is?
No. I guess I've seen him in the Twilight Zone.
He was Mick in the Rocky series, his coach.
Okay, maybe I should watch the Rocky series.
He was the Penguin on Batman.
The new one?
No, in the 60s.
Oh, okay. Maybe I should watch Rocky. That's probably one.
That's another one. It's
okay, so
important
Rocky's
to see.
one I should watch. But the Twilight Zone episode is he wants to be left alone and read his books, and a nuclear war or some global apocalypse happens and everyone's dead and he's finally left alone and the only thing that's like survived is a library with books. So he goes in to finally sit down and read his books, but he breaks his glasses. So now he's left alone without his books and he can't get his glasses fixed. So that was a good one. But Rocky, why should I watch the Rocky movie? Should I watch just the first one or 1 and 2 or?
I think 1 through 5.
1 through, that's a lot.
The 5th one I didn't do so good, and but the first 4 are the ones that are the most like remembered.
Okay.
I'd say it's like the story of like a guy who has like very little, and then rises to have like everything, and then I think in the 4th one or the 3rd one, it's like taken away from him. In terms of like wealth and like, so for the first one, he's
Okay.
he is a amateur boxer who gets the chance of a lifetime to fight Apollo Creed. And it's a spoiler, but in the end he loses.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter that he lost to him because he gained the self-confidence to go out there, and he gained Adrian, the love of his life. Right? That's why you get that famous line where he says, "Yo, Adrian, we did it," at the end. Because it doesn't matter that he lost, he did it. The fact that he got there. And then the second one, Apollo and Rocky have a rematch. And that's where Rocky wins and is now the heavyweight champion of the world. Right? So now he's gone from that to another step higher. And then the third one is when...
Is that the Russian?
The third one is with Mr. T.
Okay.
He plays a guy named Clubber Lang, and he's like the new up and comer, and he challenges Rocky. Like he wants to take him down. And this guy's vicious, and so Rocky realizes I can't beat this guy, so I need to ask Apollo Creed to train me. So it's more of like the coming together of enemies to now become best friends.
Okay.
And then I can't remember which one it was. I think it's the 4th or 5th where he like goes bankrupt or something. That's another part of the story. But the 4th one is where Apollo is trying to get back on his feet, and he challenges this Russian guy who like obliterates him and kills him in the ring. And so Rocky has to
Get revenge.
beat this guy to like kind of like for revenge for Apollo and to prove that he's not obsolete anymore.
Okay.
Because time has passed. I think his son is born in that one.
Do you think that have you read the Lord of the Rings books? No. You've seen the movies, right?
A long time ago.
Okay.
I've never really been into Lord of the Rings that much.
I can edit that part out for you. But why do you think the Lord of the Rings haven't been appealing to you? Because I watched the movies and liked the movies, and then I eventually got around to reading the books. My favorite Lord of the Rings books is not any of the Lord of the Rings books, but my favorite one is The Silmarillion, which isn't really a Lord of the Rings book, but it's set in Middle-earth. If you would like more interviews like this one, or just more content, you can, of course, subscribe to the Cultural Catholic YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and leave a comment down below as to maybe who your favorite superhero was. And thank you for watching. Charlie, good to see you.